Episode 98 of the Paws Up podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Braun. I'm here with Jake Gibson. Jake, just two away. We've got this one more, and then big 100. And we it seems like this guest is finally coming to fruition. That's the good news. So,
yes.
Jake, yeah, how we doing? And I'm really excited. I'll let you introduce your guest. I'm really excited to talk all FIU athletics.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's always fun to get a guest that's able to talk about everything, and we have the right one for you today. I know it says the loud one down there, but don't kid yourself. I mean, he's not wrong, but his actual name is Corey Brooks, the broadcaster for the FIU Athletics on ESPN Plus. Corey, how are you doing, my man?
I'm doing great, guys. It's good to be with you. I'm violating my non-compete clause with the FIU Athletics podcast to be here, but I love you guys that much. I appreciate you bridging the rivalry. And a fun story, the first recording I did for that, I actually accidentally called it the Paws Up podcast before correcting myself. So it's all intertwined, boys. It's all intertwined. What's up?
All righty. All right. Well, I appreciate that, giving us the little shout out there, but didn't make the air, of course. But
no, it was all recorded. I was doing the voiceover after we talked. This was the first episode I did. So it was Jonathan Garber, the former women's soccer coach, and Deborah Biename, who had the game-winning goal. And we did the interview first, then we go back and do the intro. And I go, coming up on the Paws Up podcast. Oh, wait a minute. Nope. I don't know who you guys were talking to that week, but it wasn't those two. So stop, hold, do the record. Usually I'm pretty good for one take, but went two that time. It's all right. You guys were on the mind, always are. So now we can do it for real.
Yep. All righty. Been a pretty eventful season, honestly, for every sport. Women's soccer wins the conference championship. Football was football. Men's basketball, rough season for them, but still going to the conference tournament, get a win. Baseball's wrapping up. Unfortunately, it didn't go their way today as we're recording this, but a lot's happened. First of all, how have you been, Corey? Because you've definitely taken a bigger role, in FIU athletics, getting more games under your belt. But it's been a crazy season for you. Called some fun games, some high moments, some low moments in FIU athletics.
Fun's the right word. I had more excitement, more energy, more fun in the last athletic year than I have in a long, long time, maybe ever. Whether it just be the games that we got, the energy that was brought in, or the rotating cast of characters that we were lucky enough to be able to welcome into our broadcast booth.
Shout out Billy.
That's one of them for sure. And I'm sure we'll talk about it. But yes, that was a blast for me every single time. And so just leading through the calendar, I had a great time, man. And it was very nice to hear, when people come up to me afterwards, oh, thank you for doing that. We enjoy the broadcast. That's always immensely gratifying. But I judge broadcasts on if I have a good time. Because if I have a good time, then generally the people listening are going to as well. So if we're having fun and I'm not, saying the ball's at the 30 when it's actually on the 25 on the soccer field, then okay, we got our facts right. We had a blast. That's the name of the game. So I had a great time with every sport we did. And then, of course, the women's soccer tournament, being neutral throughout it, FIU wins it anyway. A blast. So excited that we've got volleyball coming up to FIU now here in the next calendar year. So we get to continue to host tournaments at FIU. And even outside of that, just the regular seasons, the high moments. And even when you talk about men's basketball, did they have the season they wanted to? No. Were there phenomenal moments within that season? Absolutely. Especially when you have the type of walking highlight reel that JB tends to bring into this program. You're never short on broadcaster moments. So they're going to continue to get better. They've completely retooled their team, so they're going to be fun to watch. And that's the great part about a lot of what we do is it's almost always fun to watch. Is there one or two where you're like, oh, all right, yeah, it happens, right? It's college sport. Yeah. Sometimes there's duds in the bunch. But for the most part, everything we do is a lot of fun. And that's the perspective I always try and have. We're not pouring concrete here. We're having a good time. We're sitting around. We're talking about sports. Always bear that in mind. And this year, because I've gotten to do it more games equal more fun, equal more events, more stories, which is always for me the biggest thing is storytelling. So the long answer to a short question, yes, I had a great time this year.
Yeah.
And 2025 is going to be pretty awesome too, especially with where football's going, and we'll talk about that soon. But let's go back a little bit because one of the things we didn't talk about when you were on was the Pitbull news. Pitbull buying the naming rights to the stadium to what was FIU football stadium.
Yep.
5-year deal with an option for 5 more, $1.2 million, which is a lot for FIU. We all know that for any G5 program, it's a lot, and not just FIU. But what were your thoughts when you heard about this? When you heard this could be a possibility? And I mean, eventually, when Mr. 305 was walking on that stage at Tamiami Hall,
I only found out a few days before that, so I knew in the summer that something was up because you see these hushed conversations, right? And hey, a naming deal is coming, but we can't tell you what it is. I'm like, okay, we wouldn't have this level of restricted conversation if it was something ordinary. But I was still limited in scope, right? I'm still thinking it has to be a corporate sponsor. So I'm thinking it's Publix Stadium. It's the most Florida thing ever. There's been so much talk about Publix Stadium being in Tampa because that's what the USF fans really want their on-campus site to be called, Publix Stadium. Like, all right, here we go. Public Stadium, a universally Florida name, because that's what the FIU brand is all about, right? The state of Florida and Miami specifically. And I was on the right track. It is Florida, and it's uniquely South Florida. And so when I found out about a week before that event at Tamiami Hall, my jaw hit the floor. I was running around my house like an 8-year-old at Christmas, man. I was so excited about what it was going to bring to FIU from a visibility standpoint, from that relationship that Armando Pitbull now has with the university. And look, I've just been listening to the music for a long time, right? And so it just made complete sense to me. And then we got the chance to televise it on ESPN Plus, that event at Tamiami Hall, and got to talk to Coach Mack. And the best part about that for me was when Pitbull was talking about the places that he lived, and he mentions Carroll City. And you see Kiwan in the crowd, just nodding his head. And so we talked to Kiwan after on ESPN Plus. I'm like, what did that have in your mind when he's talking about the places he's been? It's also the places you've been. And Kiwan went on to tell us how it meant a lot to him, and you can understand the relatability. And there's the pathway there for a guy who's been immensely successful, despite coming from a challenging upbringing in a lot of ways. And so that was inspiring. I really enjoyed it. And it meant there was a massive burden on me in that first game against Central Michigan to embrace that moment, feel the moment, as Pitbull would say. And so on the one hand, I had to make sure I was up for the broadcast, which fortunately I was. And on the other hand, because I'm extremely corny, I had to make sure I could get as many Pitbull puns in that broadcast as possible.
Right.
Which I did. And that was me betting on Kiwan because he's got this great ball to Eric Rivers. And I call it a fireball when it's in the air. And I'm like, if this ball doesn't get there or it's dropped or whatever, I just blew my number one Pitbull pun in the very early part of the game. And you can't do it again. You can't go back to the fireball after it's an incompletion. Nope, no problem. Boom, in the bucket. Eric Rivers touchdown, fireball into the end zone. And we went off from there. That was a electric broadcast. It was me, Billy Gill, Jackson McDonald, and we had so much fun, in large part because FIU commanded that game from the word go.
Yeah. So, by the way, Billy Gill was just on our show, and he had said, oh, man, it's been a while since you've had us on last, which was episode 52. In your case, Corey, it's been since episode 33. That was back on September 21st of not 24, but 23. Yep. That's crazy.
2 football seasons.
I like so much has happened since last, but something else that has happened is the increased role you've taken up this past season across all sports. It's been incredible to watch. Talk about just how you've managed it all and how you think you've grown as a broadcaster over these years.
As far as managing it, because I just want to be here, this is a place I've always wanted to be, the management part of it is pretty easy. Just constantly being engrossed in it, right? So like right now, we're talking about stuff in the off season. So when you get to the actual season, it's really not that bad, right? Because you've been locked in on the storylines. That's just like when football starts in September or in August, you guys aren't going to be like, oh, who's this dude on the team? You already know. because you've been following it. And so you're not caught by surprise. Yes, of course, there's extra prep you're going to do from a broadcast standpoint, and especially when it comes to the other team. But even then, once you get into our league schedule, you already know these teams. You've already seen them. I've already had a conversation with Jamie Chadwell, who's amazing. And so Liberty's not going to catch us by surprise, right? We know what their team is. We know where Caden Salter is. He's in Colorado now. So you understand what that entails. So as far as managing it, Jake, I really don't think that part's that hard. You just stay in it. You continue to enjoy what you do. You stay prepped, of course. That's the number one thing. My recurring nightmare that I have all the time is that I'm at a game and I'm not prepped. And so in order to prevent my horrible dream from becoming reality, it's never happened and it never will.
Nice.
But that part of it is really, really, I don't think, especially difficult. The other parts of it where you're maintaining the enjoyment, how much have I grown from it, that's where it's been a real pleasure for me, because that's the part where I take on the responsibility, right? The prep is the prep is the prep. You do that, that's a non-negotiable. You stay involved so you don't have to figure everything out from square one. But I come into every single broadcast we do like a baseball pitcher. I want to go all 9 innings. I want to throw a perfect game. I've never thrown a perfect game. You pretty much never do in broadcasting, right? There's always a bloop single. But if you throw a shutout or if you go 8 strong, you're pretty happy with it. But you always are looking at that one extra pitch, that one extra inning. I didn't like my intonation here. Or, oh, man, I said 87 when I meant to sit at 86. Or, oh, it was the other running back in the backfield. I caught it right away, but still you can be a little bit quicker. Or even, and this is where that additional role has helped too, where now calling games on ESPN Plus and on the radio, whether that be football, basketball, or baseball, like we did a few times there at the end, that's a completely different skill set, right? And I've done more TV, especially because of my 5 years in North Dakota, than I have radio, which is uncommon. Usually you start radio, you work radio, then you get to TV, and you learn how to say less. With this, where I'm essentially going from TV to radio, not really, I'm doing both, but going from TV to radio, you have to learn how to say more, because you need to describe every bit of action because the audience can't see. So that's where I've been able to try and take on that task. And there I'm continuing to grow. I just don't have the overall hundreds of radio reps, over 1,000 really, that I do from a TV standpoint. So that's been really fun for me, while also understanding that you're going to continue to grow on TV. And whether that's developing a very different broadcast style with the different commentators we have. And that's why it's been so much fun this year, because we've had the entire full spectrum of different analysts, from the most analytical and serious to Halloween costumes. We've had that range, right? And developing that rapport with Nick as well. Him and I are wired nearly the exact same way. He might take that as an insult, but we are so similar in how we're constructed, right? But we can still learn how to riff off of each other, how to communicate, how to understand what the other wants to do, and then take that into what we do and make that better. So there's always ways you're improving. And for me, that's where the joy of it comes, the understanding that, hey, you can be better in game 2 than you were in game 1. And hey, if you made a mistake in game 1, good news, there's probably another broadcast coming in short order, which is why I don't like this time of the year as much, because there's not as much going on. But
quiet,
not the worst thing to do. Get a little relaxation, reset, kind of go through, analyze the tape, right? Just like every coaching staff does in the offseason. Go back and you listen and say, all right, here's what I did. Here's what I liked. Here's what I didn't like. That Central Michigan game, my energy was a 20 out of 10, and I'm always pretty loud anyway, but I was off the charts against Central Michigan because it was the first game at Pitbull Stadium. So you're like, all right, maybe bring it back a little, not a lot, a little. So little things like that you pick up, and that's where I really enjoy the growth part of it. I'll never stop growing, I hope. Each day,
hopefully.
Hopefully.
I'm happy you mentioned prep at the start of that, because another person we've spoken with recently is Nick Garrido, and he had talked about his relationship with the broadcasters to make sure every game is covered the best it can be. Talk about that from your perspective, working with Garrido and the rest of the TV producers to make sure everything goes as smoothly as possible.
To be honest with you, I could prep about half the amount I normally would and get away with it because Nick is so locked in. I don't think I've ever worked with a director and somebody in Nick's capacity who is that informed and statistically aware of what is happening in that exact moment. And part of that is that Nick really, really likes stats. And part of that is that Nick really, really likes FIU. And fortunately, we've had people in that role who really liked FIU. You guys think way back now to Chris Santiago, who had a story for everything. Chris was the Nick when I first got to FIU in 2020. And similarly to how Nick and I are kind of built from the same cloth, Chris and I are very, very similar as well. So that made my transition much easier. And Chris had a great story about everything because he had been at FIU for so long. So that helped me lay the biographical blueprint for what was happening in FIU history and getting an understanding of the who of it. With Nick, the how of it is constantly unraveling because he's doing essentially the same prep that I am. And he said it to you guys. He had the on-air start to his career. He thought that was where he wanted to go. Eventually, he learned he liked production more, but he still preps like a broadcaster because he knows that's what the storylines are. And he does a phenomenal job of identifying what the headlines are. And it's my job to come in under the headline and write the article and maybe provide the caption that goes under the headline. And if I've got a cool picture we can do, then he can work with me and illustrate that picture. And that's a graphic you see on the screen. Or that's, hey, coming back in the fourth inning, we want a zoomed in shot of number 12 because we're going to tell a story about something really, really cool he did recently or some trial and tribulation that he overcame. Because the human interest part of it is what makes sports so relatable to so many. There's the on-field drama, which is reality TV and is great. And then there's the human interest part of it where you've got a player who is overcoming having to battle diabetes or is a player with alopecia and is trying to raise awareness that it is not nearly the stigma that so many draw it up in their mind to be. Stuff like that. And that's where you can transcend the audience. And so those are the things where having Nick in the position that he's in allows me to get to that second level stuff because I don't have to worry about the first level stuff because he's got it. He's got it. You know, baseball, he's got a pitching graphic loaded up for every single pitcher. I don't have to write down a single set of numbers for a pitcher because he's got it. Now I do because I need to have everything in front of me because I'm just wired that way. But I wouldn't have to. He's got it loaded up. So I can just look at the screen and go, yep, 17th appearance. And I don't worry about, oh boy, is that graphic right? Because that happens, right? Sometimes graphics are wrong. But with Nick, I don't worry about it. If the screen says it's 16 appearances in, I don't look at my screen. I don't look at my paper. I go, yep, okay, 16 appearances is number 17. So he makes my job a whole lot easier. A phenomenal communicator, very good at what he does. And the expansion of the role that you guys mentioned is as much because of Nick's belief in me as it is because of Nick's expansion of the number of broadcasts in general that we've done at FIU. Like he mentioned to you guys, those side-by-side broadcasts, that was not a thing before.
Yeah.
That was something he championed to do. And if it wasn't for that, we would have missed a lot of really cool baseball and softball moments early on, or a really cool volleyball weekend that was going up against women's soccer tournament, things like that. And you never want to miss those, right? Those are the ones we talk about broadcasting being a pitching game. Those are 9-inning gems, right? You almost don't have to do anything because those stories write themselves. You hate to miss those. And fortunately, we have not really had to do that. And that's where FIU kind of distinguishes itself from a lot of other mid-majors who will either do one broadcast, the quality of which is growing due to limited resources, or in some cases, they don't broadcast it at all. And that, to me, in 2025 is wild. To have some games that aren't on a video streaming platform is bonkers to me. And look, we're not all playing with the same deck, right? But we are fortunate where we are at, and I will put the FIU broadcast department up against anybody, and that includes Power 4, in a pound-for-pound fight. What we do with where we are at, man, I couldn't be happier.
100%, definitely. Let's start talking about FIU baseball.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, just literally maybe 2 hours ago, just fell Western Kentucky Hilltoppers off a walk-off homer. Not the way you wanted it to go, but overall, Corey, I mean, 31 wins, most since 2016. I mean, you couldn't have asked for a better season in terms of the growth that Rich Witten has had with this program. And hopefully, as we're recording tomorrow against Kennesaw State, they go a little bit deeper into this tournament, which would certainly be another step forward, because obviously at the end of the day, wins and losses are great, but it's what you do in the tournament that matters.
For sure. And if you look at the balance of play, I think FIU has probably been even better than their record would indicate. Today is a good example of a game where you look at it, FIU was the better team for 9 innings. Now, the better team for 9 innings doesn't always win, right? Winning in college baseball is very difficult to do. And today, give WKU credit, man. The top of that lineup is disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And so when that lineup flipped earlier today, they went 8-9-1. It was 8, nope, 9, nope, 1, bang, walk off. That's what it is. The top of that order is phenomenal. And you give WKU a lot of credit. They've taken some massive strides. They've got a lot of buy-in in Bowling Green, and they've gotten better and better as an organization. But you look at that first part of the game, right? WKU's got a great pitcher on the hill. And 3 batters in, wham, FIU hits a home run. Right after that, Rooney, wham, home run. The Panthers are jumping on pitches early and maintaining that power, and that is tough to do, to be able to bring a power lineup game in and game out. And even if your big guys aren't hitting, what has really been joyful to watch, especially this last, let's call it month and a half, basically since Jake inspired them, the guys around the order have been hitting. It's not just the big guys. You can get a big game from a Rooney or a Crespo or Gade when he was in the lineup. So that gives a huge advantage and a huge confidence to what this team can do. And look, it comes down to what it's always come down to, and does come down to for every single mid-major team in America, and maybe every college team in America: pitching in the postseason. Wins games, loses games. FIU's been a little banged up. Now, they were a little banged up last year. That's the nature of it, right? If we could solve pitching injuries, the sport would look completely different at every single level. So it's one of those things. But the Panthers have never been short on confidence. They've bounced back very well all year. So I'm excited to watch them. I guess by the time the people at home are watching this, they'll already have the result in hand. So maybe I sound like a fool on that one, or maybe I sound like a genius. We'll find out together. But certainly we'll be rooting for them against Kennesaw, and couldn't be more excited for the future of that program.
Definitely, 100%. Who are some guys that have stood out to you, Corey? I mean, you just look at some of the guys on the all-conference list that made it. Kish, you've got Brylan, Easton, the 2 all-conference freshman guys. I mean, there's a lot to choose from.
Yeah, I was trying to do a CC there with the camera angle being what it is. He's the all-freshman guy, blown away by what Cole Cleveland's brought to the table for FIU. And it was something that Coach Witten told us in the preseason, that this is the first wave of recruits. You know, we always say the third year of coaching is that year where you really identify something, right? And that's exactly what he said to us. He said, this is the first full recruiting class where you're able to lay a relationship and take a guy from wire to wire in his recruiting process. And I mean, just look at the newcomers, right? You talk about a Javi Crespo, you talk about a Cole Cleveland, guys that have been instrumental. Easton Marks, first team, phenomenal. And that's a testament as much to Coach Witten and Coach J-Ro on the recruiting side as it is to Carson Whitson doing the recruiting and the development of guys like that. So Easton Marks, blown away, has been so good, and is probably the biggest surprise on the team. Javi had a very quiet elite season. When you look at the numbers, he did a great job, and he was a mean glove at third base, which is a double win as far as that goes. And you talk about the big guys. Brylan's is advertised, man. Like, you don't want to ever knock a kid, but he's just been that guy since he got here. So it can't be, oh, we were really shocked by what Brylan did this year. No, he's been the same guy. He's phenomenal. Kish was the one who had the really nice growth, because you look at the on-base percentage. And Kish has done a really nice job of not hunting the home run. He'll get it. It'll come to him. That's why he's had one of the best power seasons ever at FIU. But he has gone up there for the most part and allowed it to come to him, worked those plate appearances, and done a nice job of growing. And look, Brendan Rooney, we got to talk about him too, right? Because his hitting has gotten better and better and better as the year has gone on. And FIU was in the very unique position of having 4 catchers who went in that opening weekend, and all of whom were vying for a starting job. Not the case in any other D1 program in America, I can promise you. And as it turned out, it would be the guy who had been here the longest who would emerge at the very end. He's that consistent presence. His framing is really good. His receiving game is excellent. He's been catching runners routinely, which is a big part of it, and he's been hitting. So there's been no reason not to trust the veteran. And his emergence as a hitter is an absolute game changer for FIU when it's on. And Andrew Ildefonso, speaking of guys that have been here, was a throwback to George Ramirez from a few years ago, and also the Bear, where he just came out of nowhere, had been on the roster, but had not gotten the opportunity at that time, and he just takes off, especially in the second half of the year. And Ildy was really good, as you saw by the fact that he was routinely hitting in the top part of that lineup. So the long answer is a lot of guys have impressed me this year. It's why you can't help but be excited about where that program is headed. Because look, at FIU, there are 2 programs that have a given right to eliteness purely based on where they are. And it's because they are the 2 best high school sports in Miami, football and baseball. This is the best football anywhere.
Facts.
All due respect to our friends in Texas. All due respect. There is not a better high school football market and youth football market than South Florida and Miami specifically. And baseball, we have the massive advantage. You can play baseball any day here, boys. Go talk to Logan Rundiero and Puck. Ask them what they were doing in December in Iowa. They were not out front pitching. You can't. It's freezing. I lived there. I get it. There's no baseball to be played. And even when they do start in March, if they work a home game, it still stinks because it's really cold.
Yeah.
And when you're wearing that hit by pitch at 97 miles an hour and it's 25 degrees outside with a wind chill, it hurts even more. And you can't feel the baseball because you're trying to pitch and your hand feels like it's going to fall off. These are not concerns that we have down here in South Florida. So we have massive, massive advantages in football and baseball. And the track that those 2 programs are on here at FIU could not be more stoked about where they're both headed. And even outside of that, everything is trending up. You talk about women's soccer winning a title, right? You talk about women's basketball getting the best newcomer in Conference USA last year. Across the board, right? Beach volleyball has a freshman of the year. That's another program that obviously has some advantages in South Florida. Women's tennis is a dynasty by any metric. Track and field sending over 10 players to regionals. So all of that is to say, everything is trending up. But the most South Florida of South Florida programs, baseball and football, headed in the right direction.
I agree completely. And sorry, Eric, we love you, but yeah, the talent here in Florida is better than Texas. I'm just saying. So,
he'd tell you that too.
Yeah, he would. He would.
Yep, I think so. But I wanted to give a shout out to
Florida
Eric.
born and raised. He'd tell you.
I wanted to find a way to give a shout out to Eric, and that was the only way I could.
Always.
Alrighty. During this baseball season, we had the Civil War between Alejandro Solana and Billy Gill. First pitches, broadcasting debates. Now that it's all said and done, now that it's all said and done, who won it? Who won that in your opinion between Billy and Solana?
It's a tricky game, right? Because Billy did a lot of games with us, right? And Solana did as well. But as far as baseball goes, where we kind of set up that rivalry, and that was an idea that Nick and I had way back when, but they each have obviously other responsibilities. Solano's with the Heat. Billy Gale has to do the Levitard show or the travel events that come with it. So it finally worked out that in the season finale, we got the payoff of those 2 together. And ultimately, Billy won it on the balance of work because he did so many baseball games and got the chance to do a good amount of football games. And Solana did plenty, did a good amount of basketball and a good amount of soccer. But because Billy was able to take more cracks at it, I would definitely say he won. But on that day, on the season finale of the 2025 broadcast season for Billy Gill, I thought Solana had the upper hand.
Yep.
The first pitch got to the plate. Now, TrackMan argues about where that pitch was located, because if you look at the video, it tells you one thing. If you look at the TrackMan data, it tells you another. Now, the TrackMan is designed for Easton Marks, not Alejandro Solana. So it is a little bit different in terms of its setup to purview. But the first pitch had a little advantage. Billy tried to set the table, flip Alejandro into a 2v1, him and Billy against me. Solana swatted it out of the air, and it turned into this big arena fight in what I'm pretty sure is the most wild broadcast I've ever done, just in terms of the insanity of it, between me, who enjoys having a good time, and Billy, who's obviously hysterical and is out to have a great time. And Solana's got a radio background, so you're never going to catch him off guard, right? If you've ever listened to Hawk and Crowder, everything's off the wall from those guys.
True.
Where my sensibilities changed many moons ago when I interned at 790 my sophomore year of college. I went into that as very hardo sports guy. There's to be no joy with sports. The sport must be respected and revered, and everything is about the hardcore analytics. And I spent that summer interning with what was then Hawk and Zaz in the morning. Amazing cast. I had those two, had Brendan Tobin, who was I've learned a lot from, Joy Taylor, who was phenomenal to me. And so that's where I kind of shifted, right? And learned that, hey, sports is important and it should give it the respect it deserves. But let's have a good time too, because that's what everyone is trying to do. So all of that is to say, that's where Solana comes from as well. And that's where you're not going to catch him off guard. So we had a great time with those three guys. It was a lot of fun. I would say Solana won the battle of the season finale. Billy probably won the war. And the ultimate victor was me, because I had a blast with both of them.
There we go.
Yes, that's so true. All right, it's been a fun episode so far. We still got some football talk coming up. Kevin, is it time for a quick news break?
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's do it. It's time for my news break. A look at all things FIU athletics and just FIU in general. Let's get right into it. Starting off with some football news, as they have announced that their homecoming opponent this upcoming season will be the Liberty Flames. That contest is scheduled for Saturday, November 15th at South Dade Kia Field at Pitbull Stadium. This will be the third matchup between FIU and Liberty as Conference USA opponents. As per usual, the homecoming games are elevated from the usual home game. Alumni of all ages are welcome back to MMC to root for the Panthers. This includes former players and coaches as well, with activities and events leading up to kickoff. Next up is just general FIU athletics news. 95 student athletes were awarded the Conference USA Commissioner's Academic Medal. The women's swimming and diving team led the way for the Panthers with a total of 16 honorees. We might need to talk to Mayor about that soon. Other team totals included women's outdoor track with 13, women's soccer with 9, beach volleyball with 9, indoor volleyball with 8, football at 6, men's soccer at 6, softball at 6, women's tennis at 5, baseball at 5, women's golf at 4, women's basketball at 2, men's cross country at 2, men's outdoor track at 2, men's basketball at 1, and women's cross country at 1. And speaking of track and field, their program completed its weekend of competition at the CUSA Outdoor Championships recently. FIU women's track and field secured a fourth-place finish, its best overall since 2014, and collected 7 medals over the 3-day meet, including 3 gold, 2 silver, and 2 bronze. And on the men's side, Blake Orr took gold in the javelin, and Raynell Chambers finished 5th in the 400 meters with a school record time of 46.35 seconds. Well, that was a fun little look into Newsbreak. Let's get right back into it here, talking about some football. Kev, you have a spicy question to ask Corey.
Yeah, sure. We'll go to that. Corey, three straight 4-8 seasons under head coach Mike McIntyre. This one probably stung the most. 5 one-score losses. You lose to an FCS opponent, lose to UTEP, who hadn't won a game. Kennesaw State, who had an interim head coach. I mean, and then you go to Jack State. You go blow for blow with them, blow for blow with Liberty, take Liberty to overtime. Jack State all the way to the final seconds.
Yeah.
Fortunately, not able to come on top, and it was time for a change. And FIU decided to part ways with Coach Mack and decided to bring in Willie Simmons. What were your overall thoughts on the season? Because I would say that on paper, this team was really good. By far the best that Coach Mack had at FIU. And unfortunately, I think it just came down to some coaching and obviously just not being able to play in tight games.
You guys know in every postseason across sports, there's always the video game simulations of those postseasons, and they figure out who's going to be the champion. You could run 200 simulations of FIU's year last year, and you would never get the result that happened. It was mathematically so improbable to fall on the wrong side of that many one-score games, especially when, like you said, Kev, they were the better team in over half of them. You win over half your games, you're going bowling. That was the objective. That was the goal. But the variance as it is, the mathematical, statistical anomalies mounted and mounted and mounted. And at a certain point, that becomes difficult to overcome. And you've got to give the players on that team, many of whom are still here at FIU, and Coach Mack and his staff a lot of credit because they never quit. And it would have been very, very easy to do so. And they never did. And that is difficult to do in the sport of football where everything you do is immensely, immensely painful. And they never showed that. They never bailed on it. You got to give all those guys all the credit in the world. And if you were able to somehow travel back in time and run that season back again, there's no way. There's no way it's 4-8. Promise. But we don't get that opportunity. We get the one sacred timeline that we have. And in that timeline, you have to make the change. They do. They bring in Willie Simmons, and the energy that is present is top shelf. It is exactly what you want it to be as an FIU fan. A lot of folks wanted Willie to be the hire the last time, right? And so now you have that carryover. Coach Simmons got more experience. He didn't just stop growing as a coach, right? He goes to Duke in the interim, learns what it takes to succeed at the P4 level, now brings that experience with him here to FIU, plus even more success at FAMU in the interim. So he got better. FIU gets a really, really refined product, a great coach, and a builder of relationships, whether you're talking about between players or between coaches or players and coaches. That's been one of the things, that family atmosphere. And boy, it's easy to say those words, right? I think every coach in America does. It's a family atmosphere. It's not always true. It is here at FIU. And that has been something that's really stood out from the get-go. And once we start this thing, maybe the variance gets them again, right? But there's not going to be a lot of get-off-the-bus games where the team gets off the bus and you go, uh-oh, we ain't winning this one. We don't have the talent for it. That's not going to happen this year.
Well, week two.
There's going to be one game, obviously, challenge, right? But look, here's the deal, right? Because I saw the face that both of you just made there. You would have said the same thing about Indiana last year, right? Yeah. Indiana, who wound up going to the college football playoff and essentially had an FCS all-star team built by Kurt Cignetti. And FIU played them about as close as anybody. And one of the ongoing memes the entire year was Sig looking really, really mad. That came from the FIU game, guys. So, yes, is Penn State going to be a monumental challenge? Duh. They're probably going to be the preseason number one, right? Yeah. They have every resource in the world. They've consistently put not only players in the NFL draft, but like first-round guys and in the trenches, which is where football games are won and lost. Penn State might be that. They also might be tight end U, because I'm a Colts fan. Big Penn State tight ends fan at the moment. So they are a phenomenal program. That's going to be a real challenge. But is it get off the bus and be like, well, we got no shot, so we might as well just show up, collect our check, and leave? No, I really don't believe that's the case. I don't think there's a single get off the bus game where you're just like, all right, well, 0% chance, no variance possible, not any given Saturday, let's just blues. Nope, that's not going to happen. There's not a single one of those games anymore because of not only where Coach Mack built the foundation of this program, right, but where Coach Simmons has already taken it in this short time. This portal has been popping, developing guys, and putting The biggest thing for me, the right coaches in the right spots to be able to take advantage of the portal and the players on the roster. I told them a month ago in spring practice, I said, guys, I wish kickoff was tomorrow. I'm so ready to go. I cannot wait for early parts of training camp and to get going against Bethune.
You got to watch a lot of spring ball. Corey, what were your thoughts on this team? I think a lot of it was just adjusting to what the new offense will look like. But really, as spring ball developed, they looked more comfortable. And honestly, if there's one thing I took away is that this defense is going to be pretty damn good despite the losses that they had. And that this offensive line, despite losing 4 out of 5 starters, is still pretty good.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Because the trenches are so difficult to evaluate in spring ball because you're not really trying to kill your teammates.
Yeah.
But once you get out there in live ball, you are coming at it with some violence. And it was very, very telling that Coach Simmons, when he was talking with Walt V and the Miami Herald, said, hey, we want to try and shore up both trenches a little bit more. And I'm not breaking any news here. He's the one who said it. And if you look at the portal, it's been a lot of offensive and defensive linemen, especially O-line, right?
Yeah.
And that's because when you look at O-line specifically, it is the most impossible position to evaluate when you're not inside the team because it's so dependent on the guy to the right or left. Quarterback, of course, there's interdependencies. Wide receiver, you don't know the route, but you can look at the play and kind of understand the scheme and the development. Offensive line is as much feel as it is scheme, as it is chemistry, and this staff understands that. So instead of going all in on guys, getting them here and being like, oh, well, he really wasn't what we thought, they're taking as many shots as they can. And depth is always a good thing. How many years have we gone where not a single offensive lineman gets hurt? 0. It'll never happen. It's too physical a position. So you develop depth in the portal while also giving yourself the opportunity for a guy to come up and surprise you. And that's a lot of what we got last year, right? Look at Travion Barnes. Nobody in Conference USA knew Travion Barnes' name prior to last year. Nobody.
Mm-hmm.
They sure knew it by the time the year was over.
Yeah.
And folks in the Big 12 are going to learn it as well. And so those are the type of guys where FIU has a massive advantage of South Florida connections. You can get players that have been underutilized in some capacity, whether it be they had to go the JUCO route, or you look at a guy who's coming from Georgia Tech, maybe didn't get as much run as he could have, now has a massive opportunity here at FIU. So there's a lot of those. And that was the other storyline for me, Kevin, even as that running back room has obviously changed a little bit. You're sitting at spring ball and you're going, yep, okay, these guys are as advertised for the 5th year in a row. Yeah. Running back is going to be the deepest position on this team. It has been for a while. That is going to continue. Those guys are studs.
And even with the loss of Allen, even with the loss of AJ Allen, you're still the deepest room with who you brought in after that.
You took one power 4 guy with experience and got another power 4 guy with experience. That's a massive dub for Coach Dub, right? Because you don't get a lot of warning anymore in this portal era, right? I'm sure AJ let him know before we found out, but it wouldn't have been by much because that's just the nature of this thing. It's a stock market, right? It's up and down, up and down. You're playing, and now there's guys that went in the portal, never even went to their team and went back in the portal. It's just where we're at with college sports. And it's going to change again a ton here in the next month when this House settlement is if maybe finally approved. It's supposed to be already 2 weeks ago, and we're still here. So it's going to be consistently shifting. But that running back room remains shored up because you're right, Kevin. That was a phenomenal get to be able to keep it level. And the returners in Bam and KJ are really gifted. Lyons showed what he can do in those last few weeks. And KJ just runs hard, man. And that's been the hallmark of FIU running backs going back these last 5 years. Devontae Price could run around you. He preferred to run through you and often would. Flex was one of the smartest football players anywhere in Conference USA. And he would consistently get more than was blocked for him. That's why he was all CUSA first team, even though if you look at those numbers from a few years ago, you'd be like, oh, those are kind of outliers for a first team running back. It's because every coach in Conference USA saw what Flex was able to do with just sheer determination, nastiness, and grit. And boy, does that sound cliche. But if you put on a Flex Joseph tape when he was fully healthy and ready to go,
He
you'll
was a
see it.
beast. Yeah.
You'll see it. And that's why Coach Mack last year, Flex has that big game, right? And he was like, yeah, that was vintage Flex tonight. Because that was the reputation and the resume that Flex had. That's what KJ brings to the table. It's a well-rounded skill set for the other two guys. So I can't wait to watch them. Plus the passing game growth, the offensive line continuing to gel. You've got experience with some guys. You've got a couple of the spots that are really shored up well, and you're going to keep taking those shots. So that's good. Defensively, like you said, Kev, they looked really good in spring ball, right? But the defense is always going to have the early advantage. We saw it last year as well. Now, as it would turn out, last year's defense was really good. So that helped. But the defense will always have that advantage. It's how do they leverage that into those game day situations? Who are those breakout guys? When you hear about Keegan Davis as the second leader that Coach Simmons mentioned after lights out, that speaks a lot about where Keegan has elevated his game to. When you look at Olusegun Adebayo, and you have to look at him like this because he's up there and the rest of us are down here, say, okay, I understand this, because you look 2 years ago what Daly was able to do at that nose tackle spot, right? He was really, really good. And nose tackles never get the love because they're setting everything else up for those linebackers. So that's where you look at Big Sue, able to represent a newcomer who can be a huge difference maker. Safety, you've got the combination newcomer, not so newcomer, and a guy who's all freshman at FIU and is now back with FIU. That's the other thing, right? You've got those returners. So at all three levels of the defense, linebackers continuing to develop, find ways to play, because obviously you had a lot of linebackers with a lot of reps on the team last year, no longer. So that defense shoring itself up and masterminding it all, and it's the reason I think FIU fans can have confidence in that defense, is Javon DeWitt, who has done an exceptional job from the word go. And I'm not sure we say it enough. But if you look back, and I'm going to go all the way back to that New Mexico State win, which was FIU's first FBS win in like 2 years, the Panther defense was in the right place at the right time every single time in that game. Didn't always make the play, right? But they did enough to win the game, and they held a guy in Diego Pavia, who we now know is an SEC quarterback. They kept him down long enough to win the ball game. So that was the one for me where I'm like, okay, I understand what this defense is capable of. And that's where having him back, having a guy like Coach Gator back, returning that familiarity, returning that Miami understanding to what makes a South Florida defensive back so good. Even with the change at corner that FIU is going to have opposite Deuce, you trust that to develop. You like those safeties, linebackers coming along, D-line, adding guys out of the portal, continuing to rotate depth because you're going to rotate those positions a ton, nature of Conference USA. There's something to be excited about at every single position on the team, and not every G5 team can say that anymore.
Absolutely. That was a great assessment. I think we're all in agreement. This is taking too long. Let's just get college football back now. But
I know. Okay. I wish. But hey, look, FIU's still adding players like this morning, right? So they're happy they still have time because the portal's still open. They want to continue to reshape this roster. And it's fascinating because 5-10 years ago, you couldn't begin to fathom a transition class like FIU's going to have because it wasn't possible. You essentially had to take what you were given, what was left after the previous regime, and just work with it. And now, as much as the portal has been a challenge for mid-majors all across America, the benefit of it is you can accelerate year one in a way that was not previously possible. Look at what IU did, right? FIU's very first game against Indiana. That was a completely different Indiana team. Like, it had no bearing on the Hoosiers of 2024. It was not the same team. And that's a Power 5 version, obviously. But that blueprint can scale, that can scale to FIU and what the Blueprint Collective and what FIU's NIL operation is capable of, even as a G5 team. So you can accelerate year one. You can get to a spot where you take what was left with you, and the previous staff who laid that foundation and build upon it instead of, okay, we just have the foundation and then we're going to take 2 years to get going. That doesn't have to be the case anymore. And this staff seized on that momentum from the word go. They're out there building relationships in South Florida. So many of them are from here, right? So it's even more renewing relationships in South Florida. And it's created multiple pipelines for FIU. It is the exact model of which FIU should be running its football team. They are. They're taking advantage of their biggest opportunities, which are right here in South Florida. So, like you said, I wish it was tomorrow. They're certainly happy it's not, because there's still guys who are being added to this roster right now who are going to make meaningful plays in September and October and November.
Gosh, it's only the first period. Bobrovsky's playing out of his mind already.
What else
All right, anyway, sorry, distractions. I know. Let's get into some fun rapid fire questions here, Corey, as we start to close up shop here, starting with a pretty controversial one because you have so many great answers. Who is the funniest coworker at FIU Athletics?
So when you guys asked Nick this and he didn't immediately say me, I was a bit disappointed. I make Nick laugh more than anybody. So to be fair, I think Nick should have said me. I will not say myself, but I do have a knack for making Nick laugh. Nick is hysterical. So I think Billy said Nick, which I would agree with. Nick is hysterical.
Cool.
We have to say Billy though, don't we? I mean,
I feel like you do.
Different type of humor, obviously, and it's probably not for everyone. I think the best way to sum it up is pull up a Norm Macdonald skit on YouTube. If you like Norm Macdonald, you're going to really like what Billy Gill has to offer. If you think it's dry humor and you don't get it, oh well, sorry about it. It's really, really funny. And it makes me laugh every single time that we get the opportunity to work together. And that has been a real blessing for me. Every time Billy shows up, you have those people in your life, right? Where the second you see them, you just smile, right? They just light up the room for you. That's Billy Gill for me. The second I see him, I'm like, all right, I'm just in a better mood. I know we're going to have a great time. It's hysterical. And he continues to find ways to make me laugh. And it's so funny because that first baseball game we did, where it was just him and I, was the very first time that it had only been him and I, right? It had always been a 3-man booth where it plays, you can have one guy doing the serious, and there's always something to bounce off of. And coming into that first game, I have to admit I was kind of nervous because I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to be quick enough to keep up with him, because Billy Sharp is attack. He's funny, but he's sharp. And I come into it a little apprehensive, and within a minute and a half, I'm like, no, never mind. We're good. We're going to have a great time. We're going to laugh. And I looked forward to every broadcast we did, but thoroughly enjoyed the Billy Gill broadcast, and also enjoyed the other end of the spectrum, right? I mean, when it would say be me, Patrick Murray, and Ryan Guida for baseball, I'd put that booth, especially with those two guys, up against anybody for the smartest baseball booth anywhere on ESPN Plus. Because Ryan was Tony Romoing every other pitch. He knew what was coming because he's a professional hitter who was very involved in the scouting report of not only FIU, obviously, but their opponents. He knew them all because he grew up with a lot of them. And Pat has a great understanding of the analytics that Ryan's looking at and giving to him. What does that mean to the grander story of the game and of the at-bat? So that was a professional and a sharp, smart booth. So we got the chance to have a great time, great laughs with all of them. I'm just remembering right now this was supposed to be rapid fire, and I really biffed that part of your question, Jake, because that was not rapid at all. Short answer, Billy Gill.
There you go.
You're up, Jake.
Oh, yeah. So who
rapid
is
fire. Sorry, I blew everybody off the spot. That's all.
It's all good. Well, when you do have some time to do a bit of R&R here on campus, where is the go-to spot to grab a bite to eat?
Chick-fil-A. Without a doubt, Chick-fil-A. I was
PG5.
giggling when you guys were talking to Coach Dunn and he was like, yeah, we kind of got lost trying to find the Chick-fil-A. I was like,
Yeah.
look, I've been there. That
I
happened to
don't
me the
blame
first
you.
time.
I don't blame you.
Happened to me the first time. I was the exact same thing. A lot of love to Tropical Smoothie because obviously it's very close to OBCC and we spend a lot of time at the Ocean Bank Convocation Center. And there are some incredible places within 5 minutes. What?
They just scored again. Oh my gosh, it's another goal.
There you go. That's Jake telling me to wrap up. It's again, not rapid fire, but also 2-0. Like I said, man, I'm not even worried about these guys. This is the Panthers. This is the great value Florida Panthers known as the Carolina Hurricanes. We're chilling. We are chilling. But Chick-fil-A, Tropical Smoothie, a lot of great places within 5 minutes of FIU if you want to go off campus.
Okay.
Alrighty, last one. Greatest broadcaster quote in sports history, in your opinion?
Do you believe in miracles?
Yes.
How could it be anything else? How could it be anything else?
Iconic.
Wrap us up, Jake.
There's obviously a lot of great ones, but for me, that's the single greatest call that's ever been delivered.
Even if you're not a big hockey guy or not even from that era, you know it.
If you live in this country, right?
Yeah.
That's not a hockey call.
Yeah.
That's an international call that has American patriotism tied up in it, the whole thing. That's the best call. And there's some great ones. There's some unbelievable calls, but that's number one.
Locally, let's go home, baby. That's my favorite. Locally.
No doubt. Yeah. That is the number one. And we've got the chance. I haven't even mentioned that, right? We've talked about all the guys we've had the fortune of having in the broadcast booth list at FIU. How cool do you think it is for me? I'm sitting next to Goldie and I go, Moy, you know this voice I always hear on the TV? It's like he's sitting right next to me and he's like talking to me about FIU football. It was amazing. And you never geek out. You never nerd out. Oh boy, it's Goldie. You got to try and maintain a professional decorum. Well, inside being like, you have called the greatest hockey moments of my lifetime, and I thank you for it. Like, it's cool, man. We are so blessed to be able to do what we do, where we do it, with the people we do it, and you don't take a single day for granted.
Alrighty, Corey, you've been an amazing guest, as per usual. However, I have one more thing to tell you. If you have anything you would like to say to the fans, to FIU, to anyone in particular, the floor is now yours.
I appreciate it. It's a big thank you because it's not lost on me the opportunity that's here, right? And I appreciate the folks that tune in, that enjoy what we do, that tell us they enjoy what we do, or even if you don't tell us. I like the people hang out, even if you don't like it. You hang out with us, you partake in the adventure. That's what it's about, man. And I put the loud one as my name, even my style. It's probably not for everybody, but I think a lot of FIU fans enjoy it. I think it's very FIU. I'm loud. Miami's loud. I appreciate that synergy, and I appreciate FIU fans for being a part of what we do on ESPN Plus. The growth we've been able to have is because you guys tune in, because you engage, because you're a part of it. It's meaningful. It's not lost on us one bit. And we cannot wait to get rolling with you in August. Soccer season's right around the corner. Football's going to be a blast. Volleyball's right there. So it's right there. And thank you for hanging out with us for every bit of it.
All righty. We'll wrap it up here. Corey, we appreciate you a lot. Thank you so much for doing this.
Yeah, man. Anytime, you guys. Anytime.
From Corey, myself. We'll see you guys all next week. Episode 99, a familiar face coming on the podcast.
Can we just spoil it, bro?
As we reminisce on 100 episodes. It's about to be.
Yes.
All righty. We'll see you guys all next week. Peace out. And as always, paws up, baby.
Paws up!